This week, we got a From the Ashes preview book with 3 to 5 pages of preview art and story from X-Men, Uncanny XMen, Exceptional XMen, some interviews with the major creators. And here to talk to me about that is the X-Men historian, the X-Men aficionado himself, Doc.
It's a sampler. I don't know if we're necessarily going to want the meal after this.
Yeah, it's weird. We'll get into the details, but I assumed the strongest thing about From the Ashes was going to be the art. That might have been a false assumption. They also had interviews with the major creators, Jed MacKay on X-Men, Gail Simone on Uncanny XMen, Eve Ewing on Exceptional XMen. Those made sense. There were only 2 more interviews with creators, and it was Stephanie Phillips on Phoenix and Saladin Ahmed on Wolverine. I feel bad for Jeff Thorne. He's considered less significant than Stephanie Phillips.
Technically, she is more important because she is more responsible for a larger percentage of Marvel and DC's output than Jeff Thorne, even though it is of the same level of shit.
There you go. I'm sorry, Jeff Thorne. You're less important than one of the generic Stephanies. Getting into these previews, the first one we got was Uncanny XMen, Jed MacKay and Ryan Stegman. I don't know. I thought for some reason this team led by Cyclops in Alaska were going to be like underground and unknown. But the opening scene is like the police chief from the local town coming to see Cyclops for a meeting. And then it's like the weirdest version of Beast. He doesn't look cool. And then he's like Butler Beast. He's not an actual scientist or anything. He's just like the welcoming committee.
I had an expectation that this was going to be kind of an underground X-Men operating out of this old base. They're essentially on the run and they are outlaws, kind of like during the Bendis era. Nobody knows that they're there. They're operating in secret because they're kind of borderline villains, but they're trying to be heroes, but all of his team is villains. And that's very, very, very much the same vibe we're getting from this, except for apparently they're doing it with the approval of the local sheriff for some inexplicable reason.
So that was really strange. And then just the look of Beast was really strange. I expected Stegman's Beast to be phenomenal.
For a guy that draws a lot of characters, rather bulky and jacked, everyone in here looks really, really skinny and kind of twinky. Now they're like super cut and everything. Beast here is ripped, but he's not big. And I would have expected him to be, Stegman's Beast to be a lot more similar to the way he drew Venom, where he's almost hulking. Instead, we get this kind of svelte Beast. No, I get it with the coloring. They were going back to like a very 80s portrayal of Beast with the hair that's kind of like Wolverine's haircut and the real black around the eyes. That's something that they used to do back in the 80s and back in even through the early 90s. But at the same time, he made him really skinny, and then he didn't seem to be acrobatic at all. Like, I mean, he just answers the door like a normal dude and then just kind of like wanders in, with the sheriff following him. There's no hanging from the ceiling. There's no him opening the door with his foot or any of those typical kind of Beast-isms. And it's kind of just disappointing.
Thought that was weird. The other thing that stood out to me, we do see a very short glimpse of Cyclops on a mission. Why is Quentin Quire there? Because he's a complete bitch still.
I don't understand why they would recruit him other than the fact that Phoenix, Jean's off in space doing space stuff and they need another telepath or telekinetic, but they have Psylocke right there. So like, I don't understand why he's there. I mean, yes, he's there to just be, I guess, the resident bitch. Because even in this preview page, the first thing you see is him pissing and moaning to Cyclops about how he's going to get them killed and that he shouldn't be there. So he's just there whining on the first page. So I guess nothing's really changed with Quentin other than the fact that he's not just a whiny bitch over a girl now. Now he's just a whiny bitch in general.
Couldn't agree more. Let's move on to Uncanny XMen by Gail Simone with David Marquez. This is easily the one that I think shows the most promise. It's the one that feels most X-Men. Although them fighting a dragon not in Otherworld seems a little bit strange, but they're down in South America. We've got Rogue and Gambit basically meeting up with Wolverine, and they're going to take down a dragon. Just a couple of things I noticed. I can already tell I can't take Gail Simone's Cajun voice.
It's pretty abysmal. It's a hard one to get right, and I can tell from just these three or four pages that I am going to despise it. She misses by a mile on that.
The other thing that surprises me, I was excited for David Marquez because I think he's a really good artist. We haven't seen him in a while. This isn't nearly as clean as I'm used to with David Marquez art.
Yeah, honestly though, I'm glad for it. David Marquez has a normally very slick, clean style. We need to not have a slick, clean style for any X-Men book that Wolverine is one of the core members of. Wolverine in a slick, clean style just looks weird. Now that works for Rogue. It works for Gambit. It won't really work for Nightcrawler. It might work for Jubilee, but Wolverine, definitely not. It's not a look that works for him. So I'm okay with David Marquez adjusting his style. I think the one problem I do have in this is he's still doing that very computer generated type layouts. As a result, there's no line weight to anything he draws. When I first saw this preview a couple of days ago, my brain broke trying to figure out whose sleeve it was. That scene right at the beginning where Rogue is carrying Gambit in and he's kind of hanging down from her. Their sleeves looked like they were just one sleeve, and I couldn't figure out whose arm it was. It turns out it was actually both of them, but because of all the same line weights, there's no way to distinguish between the two sleeves, and as a result, my brain just fucking broke. Adding some additional line weight would really, really help, especially on the border of a person. I need to be able to tell where one person ends and the other begins.
I guess the other thing that just kind of stands out to me, I don't know if it's a negative or a positive. The X-Men fighting a dragon, I think is perfectly okay. I got no problem with it, but like that in the first issue when they're supposed to be underground and being persecuted because they try to take over the world or whatever, seems like a little bit of a strange place for them to be in, you know?
Doesn't seem like any of the previews so far are actually establishing anything that's going to be like a new paradigm. It's not really setting anything up long term. It's not giving a direction to the book. It's establishing a team dynamic or a location for it, but we know that the X-Men, at least in this book, are going to be in New Orleans, but the preview pages are them at Teotihuacan. And I feel like Gail Simone was just like watching way too many episodes of Ancient Aliens around the time that she was scripting this book. And she's like, fucking dragon and Teotihuacan, because it's a cool name and it's an interesting locale. But there's nothing here that's really telling me what this comic is going to be about, what kind of, long running plot, whatever the main subplot's going to be. We're just establishing more generic villains. So this book isn't doing anything except for establishing 3 of the 5 or 6 characters that are going to be the main character, and not even in the setting that they're going to be mostly in.
Let's get to the one book that does look absolutely terrible. I don't think anyone has a lot of expectations for e-viewing on Exceptional X-Men. This book is guaranteed not to make it past 1 year unless they just keep it going out of spite. No one is going to be interested about this book. And it's just the most over-the-top interpretation of what X-Men is supposed to be that I've seen in quite some time. It's almost like Tom Taylor X-Men Red levels of cringy bullshit. Yeah. We've got this young mutant. I think her name is Broad. She's trying to get into his show. She's got a ticket. The owner and management won't let her in. And he lays her hand on her. Kitty Pryde's like, well, should have put his hand on her. And her mutant power goes nuts and wraps him up in tentacles. And then shots are fired because they are just a persecuted minority.
This is the most cliche, over the top. Hey, we need to establish that the world still hates and fears mutants. So we're going to take this weird tranny looking anime girl, maybe sort of thing. I mean, it'd be one thing if it was like, hey, we're not letting you into this club and we're not going to take your money for admission. She has a ticket. They have to at least refund her money. It's one of those over the top cases where they're trying to establish bigotry, but all they're doing is making this person so obviously in the wrong I'm not concerned about bigotry. I'm just thinking this guy's an asshole. Kitty Pryde is, I guess, kind of the jaded X fan watching from afar going, I still don't care. I'm not getting involved. None of this matters. She was perfectly fine when the mutant was really manhandling this bouncer guy. She was fine with that as the disproportionate response to just getting pushed back. Her hair tentacle things start wrapping around him and basically boa constrictoring him, that he pulls out a gun and fires a shot when he feels like there's a threat of death and being killed here. That's when Kitty decides to step in. Not when the mutant freaks out. Her tentacles are flying around everywhere. Kitty decides, no, I'm not getting involved in that. It's when people start defending themselves from the out-of-control mutant. That's when I need to get involved, and I need to beat up the people that are defending themselves from the out-of-control mutant.
It's not a very good preview. I don't think it gets people excited in there. And like you mentioned, I'm certain that Bronze isn't female.
That looks 100% like a dude wearing an anime girl costume. The jawline's wrong. The facial features are wrong. The body proportions are wrong. Whoever, I don't remember who the artist on this
Carmen
book
Carnero.
Is. Carmen Carnero. I don't remember what I've seen from Carmen Carnero in the past. I know I've seen stuff. I believe she's capable of drawing female form that looks like the female form. This is very, very obviously not the female form. Regardless of what all the sketchbook stuff that they've released prior to this, I have about 0% chance that Bronze is actually a woman. Or a teenage girl. It's going to be a dude.
I know of all the three, that's easily the one that I'm just like, yeah.
No, this book's DOA.
It's gonna be awful.
Yeah, this book is completely and utterly dead on arrival. The preview pages are not exciting whatsoever. They are the worst interpretation of conflict between mutants and humans. They are the most cliche an exaggerated version where you have to make the human completely and utterly just like flat out breaking the law and then assaulting a person. And then, even though they're a complete and total douche, the disproportionate response of out of control mutant that has no ability because this is the first time their mutation is kicked in and their tentacles are going crazy and nobody knows what's going to happen. Nope, not going to do anything about that. That is the perfectly reasonable thing to allow to happen. We just need to stop the guy that's actually going to defend himself. Sure, fine, fuck it, whatever. You already lost the plot, Eve.
So what are your thoughts? Does this get you more excited, less excited from the Ashes, or is it basically what you thought it was going to be?
I hate Gail Simone's Cajun accent, but I might be interested in picking up that book. I don't like how Stegman somehow turned all of the X-Men into skinny twinks, but I might be down for that one. For some reason, Psylocke looks more butch than Cyclops here, but sure, fuck it, whatever. It's 2024. God forbid that the male character have more body mass than the female one. There is a 0% chance that the e-viewing book, honestly, I'd be surprised if it makes it to 10 issues. That book is completely dead on arrival out of the gate. The Stephanie Phillips Phoenix book that they showed a preview page, like 2 or 3 preview pages for, no lettering or dialogue in it. I mean, the art looks fine in some of the panels. In one of the panels, it looks like she has weirdly large, like, forearm gauntlets on her costume for no reason, that just appear out of nowhere. The art on the Saladin Ahmed Wolverine book looks very mediocre. I have zero interest in that book now. The X-Force book, the colors are way too fucking muddy. I have no idea what's going on half of those pages in the preview. And NYX looks exactly as we expected NYX to look. It's a vehicle for Miss Marvel. It's going to flop the exact same way that the last 18 attempts to do a book starring Miss Marvel have flopped. Then we get the cover images of the other books, the Dazzler book and Mystique. And that Mystique book looks even worse. The cover looks even worse with Mystique not in silhouette. So no, I have no interest in any of these books. Well, 2 of them are possible. And maybe I'll flip through X-Force to see if it's as muddy in person as it did on these preview pages.
Do want to say thank you very much to the X-Men aficionado himself. If you like the full conversation, because this went about 25 minutes on Patreon, it's about 14 minutes maybe here on YouTube. We've got that, as well as the full review of Venom 35, which will come out tomorrow on YouTube. It's already live right now on Patreon. On the Dok is right here, the Unfiltered Show. There's a link to the Patreon in the video description.